My name is Michael Walshe. I'm the CEO at MTM Critical Metals. We have a disruptive metal recovery technology, and we're focused on primarily high-value strategic metals like gallium and germanium. And we're primarily focused on reshoring these metal recoveries back to the United States. And we're based in Houston, Texas, which is probably the best place in the world to be doing such a venture. And I'm joined here by Steve Rio. He's the president of our operations in the United States.
Gentlemen, lovely to have you back on board. Haven't seen you since January, and a lot has happened, and a lot is happening out there. Now, you're in DC at the moment, in the thick of it.
We are. We're essentially here meeting lots of congressmen based in Texas, and we're lobbying for support for our many grants that we're applying to with the Department of Defense, and we've had great reception here so far.
Yeah, we've had very strong reception. They're all going to be writing letters of support to our DoD grant applications. We have 3 of them, and the 2 most important things that stand out is that we have a very rapidly deployable technology we can be running here in 8 months, and that compares favorably with mines and other refineries that will take 3, 4, 5 years. So in general, the government teams are very excited about our rapid deployability. And then as we dig in, they're even more impressed or more interested because we have been able to negotiate minimum floor prices for gallium and other metals with our off-takers based on supplying refined material from U.S. domestic locations. So that protects us from any downside of Chinese manipulation of market prices. And the U.S. government teams are very, very interested in that, as well as the rapid deployability.
Right, and obviously it's a very fast-moving environment. I think most people that I speak to who have been in DC are kind of surprised at the pace at which things are moving. But with all things politic, is it more chat, or is there kind of commercial component to it? Is there some financial advantage to being there? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, no, we're very impressed with the speed at which things are moving here. And apparently there's more executive orders on the way, particularly around critical metal recovery from urban mining and e-waste, which is what we're focused on. So we're very excited about this upcoming executive order in the next 2 weeks, we've heard. And we think that there's serious dollars being put behind onshoring metal, it's basically strategic, getting the US uncoupled from, maybe you would call them adversarial, other countries where all of their eggs have been put into this one basket. And in particular, they're focused on metals that the Department of Defense are using, such as gallium, germanium, antimony, all of which we are focused on.
Right, okay. Okay, so I think people understand it's busy. You're there in the thick of it, trying to kind of get that support and and look to how you kind of get the kind of financing over the line. Let's talk about some of the things that you're having to do to basically qualify and impress the people that you're speaking to. So what do they need to see from you?
Yeah, we should also confirm that dollars in hand with the Department of Defense and Department of Energy, it's over 1.25 billion US that's in hand, that's already been allocated to critical metal type projects. So the dollars are here, and we actually see additional dollars being put into those categories. So that's good. And then, as you mentioned, there's just a feeling that things are going to get deployed very rapidly, which is great. And then the things that we're doing, I think, Michael, maybe talk about the site as one of the more important things.
Yeah, we've had a very important week this week. We've managed to secure a brownfield pre-existing and pre-permitted site where we're going to locate our first commercial scale plant. That's really important for us. It essentially allows us to achieve our very aggressive timeline of getting to be commissioned by the end of this calendar year. And this site is right in the heartland of the industrial corridor in Texas, where we will have all the needed services, skilled labor, everything that we could possibly want right on our doorstep.
Yeah, the sea container port is about 40 minutes away, and a number of very large petrochemical facilities are close by. So we're in a very good location.
So it's pre-permitted site. Okay, so what items remain outstanding from you in terms of the permitting?
Yeah, and look, the most valuable part of it is that it's permitted to handle waste, which could if we were to get a greenfield site, that's an unknown quantum in terms of how long that could take to get a permit. So having that is super valuable. So we're very fortunate to be able to secure that. And then the only remaining tweaks that we have to do to existing permits are we have to essentially document the expected emissions from our plant, which are very low, and then just do what's called permit by rule. So we'll essentially just be tweaking existing air and water permits with our bespoke data for our plant. And we expect the outcome of the permit by rule in literally a matter of weeks. So the Texans move at a much different pace than most of the rest of the Western world.
Right, okay. And if you look at maybe just, I forget for people coming into this new, describe the plant, because obviously given the kind of high margin nature of what you're extracting, it's not a huge plant. So does that say that in terms of the kind of timeline to full commissioning could be a short one?
Yeah, oh, very much so. Yeah, it's a modular nature plant, and the site is very large, so we've got huge expansion capabilities in the future. But fundamentally what we do is we take incoming metal-bearing feedstocks, and that can include both electronic waste and mineral concentrates. And they are two unique business units that we have now positioned. So metal recovery from waste streams and mineral processing, so mining and waste.
And on the waste side, we have gallium-bearing scrap, germanium-bearing production scrap from semiconductor industries and solder manufacturers. That's one leg of the electronic scrap side. And then the other leg is just commercial printed circuit boards from commercial sources as well as from the Department of Defense. And we secured 3 long-term inbound supply agreements, one of which has penalties for non-supply of the volume we need for the first plant. And we've also secured offtake agreements for the materials that we'll generate from the first plant. And as I mentioned, we have floor pricing on the critical gallium and other metals so that we can't be disrupted by maneuverings by the Chinese in the market.
And when we have these terms and agreements binding in nature, we will put that out to the market. But we're very advanced in binding type agreements in both supply and offtake for these metals. And we've got a disruptive technology. We essentially use proprietary electrical based heating plus proprietary chemistry and catalysts to recover these metals.
Okay, so just again, for people coming at this new, because there will be a sort of bigger audience, I think, as this thing moves along the phases. In terms of the plant itself, are you ever kind of describe the kind of the layout in terms of, material handling units or chlorination systems or product recovery units, etc.? Because it feels like there's also I guess the long pole in the tent isn't necessarily the financing, because the capex doesn't sound like it's going to be the difficult bit. It's just getting through the kind of the permitting phase, and that's what you're rushing to.
Yeah, the permitting phase is pretty much done, as Michael mentioned. And then our equipment procurement, we'll start delivering equipment to the plant at the end of November and early December and bolting it together and bumping motors. And the basic outline of the plant is we have bulk standard grinding and shredding equipment to downsize printed circuit boards and gallium scrap. We have magnets. We have other, similar to magnets, they're called eddy current separators to get out ferrous metal and aluminum. We'll have an optical sorter to get copper out so that we don't have to flash as much of that material. And then we have our system, our flash Joule heating system, which will have between 20 and 40 individual crucibles that we're actually testing the exact crucible size now that we'll be using in the 1 ton per day plant. So our scale-up risk is really minimal. We're just going to have 20 of those lined up with more than likely a second line of additional 20 crucibles. So that those extraction units are there. And then at the back end of that, we have some equipment that'll take the hydrogen and syngas generated by removing the plastics and turn that into a saleable product of hydrogen and green syngas, which is not a huge part of the economics, but it's important for, I think, our overall suppliers to know that we're handling that correctly.
Okay, and ultimately, what are you going to be selling? Is this as intermediate concentrates, or you can convert into pure metal in-house? Do you do in-house, or is it via partners?
It's a combination of things, but the primary customers for things like gallium want gallium chloride, which is what we make. They want germanium hydroxide, and we can make that from our germanium chloride. Gold chloride is another key component that we're going to sell, or material that we're going to sell, and other metal chlorides. We can also crystallize those if we need to That's probably more of a phase 2 approach, but over 90% of the revenue of the plant will come from metal chloride sold in what we call a brine, BRINE format.
Right. Okay. So I'm just want to get into the weeds because I just understand, because ultimately this is about how do you control and manage the margins that you're going to make. Look, I get that the opportunity is huge, but you got to get into the details. So in terms of the feedstock qualification protocols, how do you assay? Is there an assay methodology that you're going to use for incoming batches?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we use very rigorous ICP-MS, so mass spectrometry basically, and we're fortunate to have just employed one of the gentlemen from Rice University, who's a PhD, and he's done his PhD on our technology, flash geoheating. So he was a very lucky hire, and he does all the assaying, and he's been doing the assaying at Rice University. So he's like pretty much an ICP-MS expert. So yeah,
okay.
that gives you accuracy down to 7 decimal places if you need it. We don't need
everything
that.
Everything comes in. There's some kind of mass balance reconciliation to everything that comes in.
Yes, and the interesting thing about the way this market trades, the e-scrap and printed circuit boards, is that we pay a small amount up front for the delivered circuit boards, which is a partial payment. Then we do an assay, and then we figure out what the yield is, and then we pay for the inbound material, the cost of goods, based on the actual assay and current market price. So there's very little, if any, risk on timing of processing. And then on a cash basis, if one of our financial people asks, what does the cash flow look like? We actually are almost perfectly balanced, where the outbound payments for the purchase of the raw materials and the inbound payments for our recovered metals almost coincide. So, we probably need 2 or 3 weeks of net operating cash flow, which in this type of business is really attractive.
So in terms of that kind of, because you got to look at the kind of grade variance in terms of the feedstock and obviously what goes out the other side, and how do you control what goes out the other side if the feedstock, if there's variability with the feed?
Well, essentially we're going to run stockpiling so that we can, if we need to blend, so we will do a lot of the pre-processing on the electronic waste, for example, and make sure that the quality is maintained to within certain bounds. And if there's any big variance, we will be able to get on top of that by having our own assay in real time, essentially, using the ICP-MS. And then as we need to blend to make sure that the product quality is what our customer expects. So there's a strategy around it, and we essentially going to use industry normal principles to achieve the quality that we need.
Yeah, and the existing building is 20,000 square feet of a very high ceiling. When you build plants like this, you like to know what's your clear height. So we have about a 40-foot internal clear height, which means we can do 3 and 4 level stacking of our equipment, which is very efficient. And then it also has no columns, so it's called clear span. So the building, as Michael said, is really purpose ready, purpose built for what we're going to be adding. And inside the building, we have room to build 3 or 4 of the units that are the 1 to 2 ton per day units. So we have a lot of expansion capability in the existing building, and then there's literally another 20 acres available to expand onto at our option if we need to.
Right, and talk to me about the feedstock, because again, most people don't sort of understand the agreement structures. Is obviously you'd need to ensure that you've got the feedstock there on an ongoing basis for meaningful periods of time. So how long are the contracts? What are the exclusivity terms? Are there rights of first refusal for material further downstream, and how do you manage that side of things?
So on the electronic waste, that's the only one that we've been able to publicly announce yet, but we've got others in the works. So I'll just maybe comment on the electronic waste one initially. So that's a long-term agreement. It's 5 years with an option, I think, for a 5-year extension. Yeah. And the critical part of the agreement, and it's based on Steve's long-term experience in the waste industry, we managed to essentially have penalties for non-supply from the supplier, who's one of the biggest players in the US. So that's really critical. That really underpins the economics. And on the gallium germanium feedstock waste, we're soon, we hope to be able to put out to the market a binding both supply and offtake agreement with our partner, who we're been working with for several months now, Indian corporation. And as soon as we can update the market, we will. But again, that will be underpinned by very mature thinking regarding how we prosecute the economics. That means that the client will essentially give us a minimum floor price for the material so that we're protected in any, say, manipulation by China or whoever who's controlling the metal dynamics. And then also on the offtake, we've got similar type arrangements so that in the good times, we share the margins, and also the bad times we're both kind of protected.
Right, okay. And how big's the team that's sort of managing these conversations and papering up these agreements?
We've added a number of, on the legal side, we have a legal team that's very experienced in government contracting and licensing of technologies, which is great. We added them, Amanda Merced, in the last 6 weeks. And then we've added, as Michael mentioned, Lucas Eddy as a PhD. I just received his PhD in applied physics from Dr. Tour at Rice University, and he spent the last 4 years working on flash fuel heating, which is great. We have another gentleman, Sam Close, who's expert in the aluminum and rare earth space from his work at Kiewit and other organizations. And then Nighthawk Engineering has an extensive staff of about 15 people that really we've kind of melded together with them to do the design and procurement of the equipment. So very, very skilled and experienced folks over there at Nighthawk Engineering as well.
Yeah, we're going to grow the team as we progress, and we've got lots of positions and a roadmap and an organization chart that we would like to achieve, in 6 and 12 months. So yeah, it's very, very exciting on what's ahead of us. Really.
Right, and obviously, there's lots of baby steps to be had here, but the ultimate goal here is to increase the size of and throughput of the plant, and increase that capacity, because that'll increase your revenue and turnover. What are the kind of things which can hold you back, or what are the things which allow you to kind of move forward? Is it purely just the number of agreements that you can get signed on the feedstock side of things, and clearly then the offtake?
Yeah, I think, well, as I mentioned, we do have the electronic printed circuit board waste already secured. And then the next part of that puzzle will be to secure offtake agreements for these products that we're making, and we're making good progress there as well. So that the offtake side of things is high on our agenda right now. And then on the gallium germanium material, as I mentioned, we're very close to a binding agreement for both supply and offtake. And then part of that process will also involve product qualification. And that will likely happen after our commissioning phase, when, the end of this year. So we do hope by Q2 next year that we're actually fully underpinned on both electronic waste and the gallium business for both supply and offtakes. So that's really our main goal is getting those secured in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and we should mention too that our purchasers, our offtake partners that are going to be buying the recovered metals, a number of them are refiners themselves. So if we sell them something that's 99.1% purity, they're making material that's 99 point and then 5/9 on top of it. So they're willing to buy a bit of a range of material from us, and that's part of what we're negotiating on the offtake agreement, is how we set the pricing for purity. But the good news is they want it regardless, and we just paid a little bit more the more pure we get it.
Right. Okay. So we talked about this pre-permitted production site. You've got other conversations on you. I think you briefly mentioned Vedanta with that kind of red mud program of theirs. Is the idea to kind of build a modular facility in India? And what could a commercial agreement take?
Sure. So there's two real distinct business models. That's how we vision the business growing. So on the electronic waste and the gallium waste, these very high in situ value materials, that's a build, own, operate model. So we will be in full ownership of the plant, and we will purchase the feedstock and essentially own all the economics of the recovered products. And then for the mineral processing, the mining-based applications, which is generally more higher throughput bulk type tonnage operations, that we see as a royalty-based kind of tolling system where we essentially license the technology, and the client pays for the equipment and the ongoing services plus a technology fee on top of that. So two discrete models, and that's the royalty-based system is what we're envisioning for Vedanta and the red mud because of the tonnages involved. And also, generally speaking, these mining clients don't want anyone operating equipment on their sites. So essentially, we sell them the equipment and the services, train them how to use it, and then get an ongoing, essentially an annuity or a royalty-based payment based on that per ton of material processed.
Yeah, a couple of other interesting things that are happening just literally as we speak based on our meetings here in Washington, D.C. this week. A number of the folks on the government side have asked us to go find, in addition to our pre-permitted site in Texas, 3 others geographically distinct, one on the East Coast, one in the upper Midwest, and on the West Coast. And I've been working on that, and we actually have a couple of places already lined up that would also be pre-permitted. So for the rapid deployment of the technology on the government side, they're quite pleased, and they may be asking us to add another 3 pre-permitted sites. Then the other thing that's going on a parallel track in our work with Nighthawk and a couple of other groups is that our design right now that we're implementing in November and December is semi-batch, where we have the 20 crucibles lined up. We flash the material, extract the metals, empty them, and then fill them up again, very similar to what you would see like in a V6 automobile engine. Having said that, the design crew, the extended crew on the design side at Nighthawk and inside of MTM have come up with a design that's continuous. Yes, thank you, Michael. It's a continuous design where we've changed a little bit on how we do our proprietary chemistry and apply some of the feedstocks and handle the feedstocks. But that will spring us forward dramatically in terms of volumetric throughput on a daily or monthly basis.
Yeah, so that's our vision for, I suppose we're calling it revision 2 of the design, this fully continuous and it's potentially much higher throughput system.
Okay. So that's potentially what 4 owner-operated sites in the US if those others come off.
So
that's what you'd like to.
That's kind of hot off the press this week after all the meetings we've had in DC. So a key point for them is having not just onshore metal supply in the US, but it's also having geographical diversity. So not just coming only from Texas. And as Steve mentioned, they want plants all over the country just to give that optionality.
Right. Okay. And what about elsewhere? Like you look at the EU's kind of Critical Raw Minerals Act and Japan's advanced e-waste regulation, etc. Are you walking before you run, and you'll get around to that?
Yes,
or
we are
seeing more.
We are. We certainly have those guys on the radar, but we have begun early, I suppose, investigations and trying to source semiconductor waste out of Taiwan, which would be an obvious one for gallium-based chips. And we've also got early engagements with several players in Japan who are interested in the technology, and Japan is obviously a huge e-waste market as well. So it's early days, but as you say, we don't want to overcommit because of our small size currently. Yeah. And we want to prove up the technology here in the US, get it bulletproof, and then we can look at expansions globally thereafter.
Okay. So commercially, you guys have been sort of very much focused on getting this thing going. Could you do me a favor though? Just for audience new to all of this, do you mind if we kind of just run through kind of FGH for them, just so they can pick up exactly what all of this commercial opportunity is based on? So thermodynamic mechanism sounds complicated. Can you talk us through that thermodynamic pathway of FGH for us?
Fundamentally, we're trying to compete and essentially make metal recovery better. The incumbent techniques are generally speaking called pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy. They've been around for hundreds of years, and what you could argue is that they're non-selective. They don't just recover the metal that you're after in whatever feedstock it is. They also recover a soup of other metals that you have to spend energy and time then separating. And the key distinctive edge on what we're doing, we're applying electrical-based energy. So we could use renewable energy if it's available. Electrical-based heating plus some proprietary chemistry. And we're effectively distilling off the metals that we're after in a feedstock, such as, say, gallium in a paste material that's a refinery waste. And we're distilling that off. We're combining the gallium with a reactant like chlorine. We do have options for other reactants. So we're getting the metal atom of gallium to stick to a chlorine, they form gallium chloride as a vapor. And then that vapor comes off, we condense it, and we capture it as effectively a brine solution, a chloride-based solution. And then that chloride can be either crystallized out as a subsequent more refined metal product, such as, say, gallium hydroxide, or we can just sell the brine as it is. Like gold chloride sells for almost parity compared to gold in situ metal value, as one example. So we don't necessarily have to take these metal chlorides into more downstream products. And the key will be to find these off-takers who want the given product that we have. But we're not limited to just chlorides. We can take the flow sheet further if needs be. But right now we don't need to do that. So it's essentially proprietary electrical heating plus chemistry to distill metals, and it's much more elegant than the traditional techniques.
Yeah, the other thing that's become very interesting as we've had talks with industrial customers is that many of them see it as an enhancement to what they're doing, which they want to bolt on immediately. So a number of these different materials have issues with their fines, FINES, the smaller material, where their systems for concentration aren't geared or really designed to handle fines or get gummed up literally with the fines. So we've been doing a lot of testing in the last 60 days on fines, and we've had very, very good results on recovering metal chlorides from fines. So we have a number of industrial partners that want to basically bolt on the system from us to handle fines and get them a higher return on capital on their existing sunk costs. So kind of an EVA positive enhancement of what they're already doing.
And then the fines sits under the mineral processing and mining business unit.
Yeah.
That's separate to the electronic waste.
Yeah. And actually a number of the electronic scrap processors in the U.S. have fines that they're getting paid for, but they're not getting paid very much. So there's a discount being applied to the fines, and we think we can enhance that and help them with that.
And I guess going forward, in terms of, I can come back to the feedstock material selectivity. What selectivity have you achieved in, say, vaporizing the gallium, indium, or rare earths from sort of a kind of multi-metal sort of matrices? I mean, are there issues around co-vaporization, impurities, cross-contamination, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, so far it's been really positive, and we effectively use temperature as a means of separating these metals, because generally speaking, they'll have different formation temperatures with chlorine based on temperature. So we can use temperature as our essential control mechanism. For example, gallium and germanium chloride paste that we have, gallium germanium paste, it's got like 15% gallium and 18% germanium. So it's off the charts in terms of in situ value. And we've managed to separate that into an almost pure gallium chloride stream as one stream, and then the second stream is an almost pure clean stream of germanium chloride. So we've got purities of over 90%. So that brine is over 90% gallium chloride or germanium chloride. So that's really, really encouraging so far, and we hope to achieve the same at the full-scale unit by the end of this year.
Yeah, and I think back to that thermodynamic question, our proprietary chemistry and our proprietary catalysts and reagents allow us to more finely tune temperatures to match up with the actual vaporization temperatures for specific metals and metal chlorides.
So it's then what Steve is essentially saying there, if there's a small difference in temperature between gallium chloride and germanium chloride forming, we can tweak that by using the catalyst to get a much more cleaner split between them. Yeah.
Okay. And
there's a lot more work to be done on how much reagent, how much catalyst, and residence times, but all of that seems to be coming along nicely. But there's a significant amount of work we'll be doing in the next 6 months leading up to plant startup on that.
Right.
And because of our partnership with Rice University, we've got the full force of their technical team behind anything that we potentially do in the future. We've got an ongoing collaboration with them. So we've got a huge technical brain behind the company as well.
Yeah, the Dr. James Tour and the Tour Lab at Rice have just been phenomenal partners, and we're actually partnering with them on a number of the DoD grants as well.
Okay, and then again, as I always do, I'd like to kind of come back to the show me the money bit, which is around energy intensity. Like you guys talk about being you're the deep seek of the smelting world. You use a significantly less energy consumption and smelting. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, based on our testing so far, and look, Dr. Tour has actually published papers, academic papers on this, so this is not just us making it up, but based on a typical smelter-based, say, metal recovery application for gold from e-waste, it's estimated, at least based on the Dr. Tour published paper, we're essentially 90% less energy. Now, we won't publish anything like that until we know for sure that we can achieve those type of efficiencies at scale. But one very interesting thing is that the chemistry involved is exothermic. So when a chlorine atom sticks to one of our target metal atoms, it actually gives off heat. So all we have to do is get the system up to temperature. That's the sunk energy, and then everything else is essentially keeping itself going. So we think the overall efficiency is even better than we originally expected. But we're not going to put out any hardcore numbers until we've got that data from the full-scale plant.
It's interesting when you sort of, in sort of conventional terms, when you sort of think of these kind of smelters, and they need like to be in continuous usage, and they don't like shutting them down because they're hard to kind of start up. But for you guys, is there a kind of batch throughput number for flash Joule, or is it something you need to kind of keep going?
We've now, as I mentioned, we're testing the crucible size, the extraction unit size at 1 kilogram and 2 kilograms per flash, which actually is bigger than what we need for the 1 to 2 ton per day plant. And as I mentioned, we're going to have 20 of these extractors lined up, probably 2 lines of 20. So we're well ahead of the kilogram per flash, so to speak, that we need. And we're very happy with the results. So we're just kind of refining, we have flow rates, how much chlorine we push in. And one of the things that's kind of gone the other way for us, which is not, it's not horrible, but we're going to spend a lot more energy on preheating the material before we flash it. But we're able to insulate those units, and we feel like that's well under the budgeted amount of energy expected.
Right, and I guess, again, finishing off just on a kind of commercial point, is this a case of first mover advantage for you guys? Is this defensible? Sorry, is your intellectual property defensible? Is the barriers to entry into the marketplace defensible by the fact that other people will not be able to get the contracts to be able to kind of compete with you guys? I mean, how do you view that?
I think the key difference for us is we don't need huge scales and tonnages to be commercial, and because of the nature of the technology. Technology is very well patented, underpinned by at least 6 different patents that we've inherited from Rice University, and we've also subsequently added several of our own bespoke patents as well. And I think that the key message is that we can get to production much quicker than a mine or even any other recycling technology that we know of. It's got a very high efficiency rate, and we don't need huge electricity. We don't need huge hydrometallurgical solvent extraction plants. So we've got a much bigger edge than maybe we've even spoken about in the past. And I think that having this site now means that we will achieve production by the end of this calendar year. And it was a very aggressive schedule to put out, but we definitely feel we can make it now, having this site available.
Yeah. I think the moat is very strong around the technology, primarily around the proprietary reagents and catalysts and the chemistry, combined with the patent protection for the flash shield heating and our new patent protection for our proprietary procedures, approaches, and chemistry.
Gentlemen, it's great to see you moving at pace. It's also great to be in a market which is also moving at pace. So appreciate your time today. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of news coming out.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.